Welcome to Working and Wandering.
I'm one of your hosts. My name's Chris,
And I'm Martha.
and we're about to talk about how I got thrown the hell out of Canada.
Yep, episode 1, kicked out of Canada.
That's how you start, right? You go all in and just tell you about how, according to the Canadian government, I was smuggling.
Yep.
So was your mama. Don't even look at me like that.
Yeah, she was.
And inadvertently, nobody was trying to be smugglers, all right? I want to clarify that. Don't be coming at me like that.
All right. So I'm going to take you way back. This is June of 2012.
Uh-oh.
My dad had passed about a year and a half prior, and my mom moved in with us, and we were her caretakers. And after living in after living in California for a year, we decided that we're going to bring her back to Alaska for healthcare. Being Alaska Native Indian, we have better healthcare provided for us in Alaska.
Yep. So we acted like every crazy Californian would. We sold our house. We quit our jobs. We loaded a U-Haul, towing a car. Martha.
I had a large SUV, and I was towing a trailer behind me. And my mom rode with me with one of our dogs, and our daughter rode with Chris and the other dog.
Yep. Beverly Hillbillies go to Alaska.
My job was follow Chris.
Yeah, and my job was do some research, you dummy. And I didn't do enough. I knew I had to declare firearms. I knew that there were certain things you couldn't bring into the country, but I didn't do enough research to truly understand that because I thought, well, it's North America, right? They're Canada, California, United States, they're all the same.
Yeah, we're just driving through, going back home to Alaska, and that's where we failed.
It was all good till it wasn't. Yeah, so we get to the border crossing, and the Canadian police stop me and ask about how many firearms. That word "about" really matters.
Yeah, I think that's where a little language barrier was. And honestly, what we should have done was the pre-paperwork filled out prior to going to the border. That would have saved us a lot of headache.
Yeah, it would have, because I told them about how many firearms I had. 2 errors there. 1, not counting exactly how many rifles and shotguns I was bringing through the country, but 2, not understanding what they considered a firearm. Right? Our daughter's little crossbow, we thought was a toy. They didn't think so.
Yeah, and that was something she inherited from my dad when he passed, and we just didn't think about it. And we had just bought her like a little BB gun for her birthday, and she was 11.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And that was considered a firearm. So that's our first problem, right? I don't declare the right amount of firearms, so I go back into the
Office.
Yeah, thank you. The office, and I ask for an additional sheet of paper so that I could continue writing serial numbers, make, model of the firearms. You would have thought a bomb went off in that building. I swear to goodness, there was at least a bell or something, because next thing you know, some lady comes out who's the supervisor there and says, "Come talk to me." I'm like, all right, cool. Why do you need another sheet? Well, I got to add a couple more firearms I ran on a room here. And then the dude at the window that was like, "About how many firearms did you have?" And I told him about. Well, I was wrong. And so the lady got pissed that I was wrong. And what did they do next?
And that was all innocent. So I was driving behind Chris, and I saw that they pulled him into one of the stalls when you go into the country. So I pulled over on the side of the street where it was safe and waited and waited and waited. Windows rolled down, vehicle off. I look in the I looked in the side mirror, and I see some of the officers unloading our U-Haul.
And we're not talking like polite. We're talking every single box out of the biggest, whatever it is, 32-foot long U-Haul was taken out and gone through item by item. It was ridiculously long time.
And this is all our household goods, including everything that my mom had brought down from Alaska that she kept and what she decided to bring back up to Alaska. And I don't know if she really went through all of her boxes.
Oh, I guarantee she didn't, because she had a bunch of stuff that your dad had and that was highly illegal in Canada, completely legal in the U.S. And the Canadian government decided to do a massive list as they were going through all of our stuff and wrote out all the things that we weren't allowed to have, such as
A stun gun.
Pepper spray.
The personal pepper spray. Switchblade knife.
Yeah. An automatic opening knife, which is completely legal in Alaska, not in California, surely not in Canada.
Yeah.
And they had more. They had a taser.
Mm-hmm.
That was a no-go.
Yeah, and these are things, we didn't go through and pack my mom's stuff. A lot of it was still packed from when she moved in with us.
Yeah, so we just grabbed the box, threw it in the U-Haul, and rolled out. But guess what? Ignorance to the law is not an excuse in Canada or United States. It's our responsibility to know what's in our possession. It's kind of like going through the airport. Well, one of the 1,500 things I did wrong that day is I had no clue what were in those boxes because her mom had sent them down from Alaska with a transport company straight to our house in California. We threw them in the U-Haul and loaded them right back up going to Alaska.
Yeah, and so they detained Chris and Ashley, and I'm not talking about handcuffs. They were just sitting in the office, in the chairs, in the waiting room while they were going through our U-Haul. They allowed me to take our other dogs, so I had both dogs in the SUV with me. And about 5 hours into it, I had walked inside, and I told Chris, I'm like I said, our daughter was about 11 years old at the time, and I was like, babe, I'm like, we got to feed our daughter. It's been 5 hours. And the office manager, she came over and told me where I can go and grab some food and bring it back for them. So, I mean, they were compassionate. They by then they understood what was going on, that my dad had passed. We quit our jobs, moving my mom back up to Alaska to get better health care. And just our ignorance was not bliss.
No, not at all. And I'm sure they hear and see this every day, right? I mean, we're just not doing a good job of doing research. I would say we, because it was Martha and I in this case. I can't say every American. Most of you guys are probably way smarter than us, and we're going to laugh at this. And I hope you, if nothing else, learn something from our stupidity. So they continue to search and search and search and search, and it goes on
10 hours.
10 hours, yeah. So about hour 9, they got to, they found my old police badge, my bulletproof vest, and a bunch of documentation that shows I was a cop in California.
And military.
Yeah, and military. And the mood or tone kind of changed at that point. The lady that was the boss that was kind of mean to me early on had really calmed down and pulled me aside and had a conversation about, like, I'm sure it was like, why do you have a badge? Why do you have bulletproof vests? In her mind, she didn't come across that way. And I told her that, hey, I was a police officer in California. I'm moving back to Alaska. At that time, I was in the hiring process for the Alaska State Troopers and Anchorage Police Department. I said, I'm going up there. And then she really calmed down quite a bit. And I think at that point, she really realized that this wasn't me trying to smuggle anything. This is just a stupid American that didn't know any better. And
we're trying to do the right thing and bring my mom back to Alaska to get her the best health care we could. And I mean, there was no yelling or screaming. Both Chris and I, we were just sick to our stomachs for hours. We couldn't eat. Luckily our daughter ate and my mom ate, and I took care of the dogs. But it was stressful. It was very, very stressful.
Yeah, so hour 10 hits, and they now have confiscated absolutely everything that was on their, you can't have list. And then a frustrating part of it was more than just a confiscation. A lot of the firearms and stuff that they had confiscated were things that were, we'll call it heirlooms from Martha's dad, as she mentioned, had passed. So we wanted to get those firearms back. So the Canadian government, when you have something confiscated, you have to pay for it at 50% of cost in order to, quote, buy it back from the government.
Yeah, so some things were confiscated. We bought back, and in combination, pay fees for the other things like the taser and stun gun, stuff like that. So while they allowed Chris to go repack the U-Haul, I went over there, filled out the paperwork, and paid for it. So now we're right with the Canadian border that we have all of our firearm paperwork in order, paid for, and documented.
Yeah, and it was $4,500, I think it was.
Just under $4,500.
Yeah, to buy back our firearms. And, of course, the things like the taser, pepper spray, stun gun, switchblade knives, you can't have any of that. They keep that. You get fined for it. So Martha takes care of that. I'm loading the U-Haul back up, which at this point, beyond just being sick, I'm frustrated and I'm angry at myself and just not knowing any better in advance. And then, insult to injury, you have to reload everything. Nobody helps you. Like when they're done, we'll call it tossing from when I worked in the jail. Like when they're done tossing your truck, that's it. Here it is. Load it back up. So I load the truck back up. It takes me quite a while to get that sucker.
Well, as soon as I was done with the paperwork, got Ashley to sit with Grandma, and then I helped you.
Of course.
Yeah.
But we get that done, and I'm going back inside to make sure that everything's done and that I'm, not in trouble with the Canadian government anymore, and I already have been. So as I'm walking away from the trailer or the U-Haul, I get stopped by one of the Canadian cops, and he positions himself in a way that is hidden from the building. So there's like these real tall pillars that you pull into, kind of like a stall, and they're at like a 45-degree angle. So you pull into the pillars. Well, he positioned himself by the truck and behind the pillar. And he said, "Come here." And I'm like, okay. So I walk up relatively close to him because I could tell he wanted to tell me something. And this is where I really got sick to my stomach, because this is like a level of corruption that I have never seen in the United States. It's the stuff you see on television. And it's really disgusting. And thank God for this cop, because it's not his fault. He did a great job. He pulled me aside and told me, he goes, "Hey, we're going to make you leave the country today. And when you come back, you have to know where every weapon is and declare its location when you come back through the border." And the reason that made me sick to my stomach, I was a cop before, right? Like we've all heard that term, like, oh, they planted evidence. Well, I'd never seen anything like that. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is the case. So he tells me that. I go inside with Martha. We double check all the paperwork. We're good to go there. And literally we leave I get told I have to leave the country.
And I followed him.
Yeah. And Martha followed us out, or us, meaning Ashley and I, out of the country. And then we went back to Bellingham, Washington, which is where we were kind of staged while we were going into Canada. So we went in through Abbotsford. So Washington State was our point of entry. So we go back there, and then it was 4th of July a few days later, right?
Yeah. We decided the next morning, like we slept on it. We didn't want to do anything haste. It was a long day, so we slept on it. The next morning, Chris just couldn't shake how the Canadian officer told him, "Know where everything is in your trailer." And he emphasized that. And Chris just had a sick feeling in his stomach. So he called the Alaska ferry system, and we got a tape measure out, the longest one we had. And we measured both vehicles separately with the trailers attached.
Yeah.
And he was able to get us tickets in later on that week. And this was like a Monday, and our ferry took off that Friday.
Yeah. And in between that was 4th of July. So I was like, we'll just stay in the hotel for a week, because we weren't RVing at that point. We'll stay in the hotel for a week. We'll jump on the ferry. We'll be in Alaska in 3 days. It'll save us a crap ton of driving.
And plus, I had some other family on my mom's side nearby, so we're able to go have dinner and meet up.
Right. So we make reservations for the Alaska Marine Highway, so the ferry, as we refer to it as. And I still couldn't shake it. It just sick to my stomach. Something's up. This feels corrupt. So Martha and I go out to the U-Haul, and we strip it again.
Yes, we take everything out and we take note. Now, I know 100% that I packed all of Ashley's items, our clothes, and we found things like in her dresser. It was just like all her clothes, her little socks and stuff. There was like a hunting knife, like one of those big carving, like I'm going to cut a tree down knife in there that I know was not in there.
I found a knife underneath the seat and the passenger side floorboard of the car on the back of our U-Haul.
And that car was emptied out. I mean, we had like some suitcases in there for clothes for hotel night stays, easy grab.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was empty.
We found Martha's mom's stuff and some of our dresser drawers, like straight up legit planted evidence.
And that's not how we repacked it.
No, absolutely not, because we didn't go into dresser drawers and add knives there. I didn't put knives under the car seat. So some, or most, because I won't say all, because the one dude gave me a heads up. He actually had a conscience. Somebody, or a few somebodies, literally took our knives that we declared and were completely legal to bring into the country and they moved them in locations that made it look like we were trying to hide stuff from the government.
Yeah, because Chris packed up the U-Haul, and we actually had a load of friends come over and help pack it. So Chris knew where the items were, meaning like his hunting gear, our clothes, like our household goods. My mom's boxes were clearly labeled grandma. So it's just, yeah, that baffled us. We were sick to our stomach again.
Yeah, and it was awful, and I could not believe the corruption on that because I started doing research. Well, I won't squirrel too much. I'll talk about that at the end. But we get on the ferry. 4th of July happens. We have a great time in town. We get on the ferry out of Bellingham, Washington, and one of our first stops is Southeast Alaska. We stop in Juneau.
Yeah. So I had messaged, this is going to sound crazy, but so I had messaged my ex-boyfriend, who was a good friend of the family, and I was like, hey, I got a box of goodies for you that I can't take once we get back into Canada to go back up to Anchorage. Can I drop it off to you? And it was like wine and knives and other things that we found that we just didn't want to take a chance that bring it in. I mean, wine, you can bring stuff like that, but we just didn't want to risk it. Like we'd already got shook down.
Right. We'd already spent thousands of dollars. We already had somebody moving things around, planning evidence on this. We were like, oh God, and this is our first time ever going through the country. So it's like we've already been fined. We've been thrown out of the country. And then we find out after, thank God for that cop, tells us to check everything we do. We find the planted evidence. So when we met with her ex in Juneau, we literally handed him anything that could be considered a weapon, absence of the firearms, because we already had the permit to travel through the country with that. We gave it all to him.
And in true Alaskan fashion, no hard feelings or anything, he brought us smoked salmon, cream cheese, and crackers.
And that's the thing.
Yep. Delicious.
That's a good thing, too. So we proceed on the ferry, and we came into Haines, if I remember correctly, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So when you come into Haines and get off the ferry in Haines, then you have to drive back through Canada. So we confused the hell out of the Canadian government because we were going through Abbotsford. Next thing you know, we show up in Haines. You can't get to Haines without either driving or boating. So we get stopped at Abbotsford, or excuse me, at Haines at whatever the Canadian station is there. And this dude's baffled. And we pull out the paperwork, show him the firearms are clear. He asks if he needs to inspect the trailer or the U-Haul, and we tell him, go for it. Have fun, because we know by this point there's not a darn thing in there.
Inspect everything. And we also just shared with him, too, that we decided to take the ferry. And you know what? It ended up being a true blessing to take the ferry.
It did.
Because we found out if we would have continued on through Washington State, going up through to Alaska that way, we could have been stranded because there was a huge
mudslide.
Yeah.
There was a mudslide that took out the Alaskan Canadian highway, which, let's be real, there's one way in and one way out. That's it. So the highway was covered in mud for a few days. So we'd have been stranded. And like I said, this is pre-RV. So it would have been us, the dogs, on the side of the road with grandma. But one of the things we learned from dealing with Abbotsford was that have the firearms and all your weapons accessible. So when we repacked the U-Haul in Washington, we moved, we had like one of those hope chests that go at the end of your bed, and we put all the firearms in there, and we had it right at the back. So when the guy's like, okay, let me check your firearms, I rolled up the door, opened the lid. I was like, there you go. Everything's right there. Here's the paperwork. So that was a pretty smooth transaction.
Yeah, and when he says firearms, there was no handguns.
No,
so
not
just
at
to clear
all.
that, we actually shipped those from
California to Alaska.
Yeah, through the gun shop.
Yeah, through an FFL and shipped them up to Alaska. So we end up getting in through Haines, not, like I said, pretty uneventful. Then we get up into, we drive the rest of the way in through Whitehorse and then into Tok without any real problems at that point, right?
Correct. And the best part is when we get into Alaska at the border and they're welcoming you back to the United States, they have dog cookies.
Right. And they had some big milk bones for Callie, which is awesome. Or that was Princess at that time.
It was Princess, our other Rottweiler, and Duke.
And Duke. Yeah.
Our
Crazy
little
Duke. So what's the moral of the story on this when it comes to getting thrown out of Canada?
Do your research, go into the website, check everything. And if in doubt, like find a way to ship something up if you cannot bring it through Canada.
And we just did our rally. We did the Southern Alley rally this last weekend in Auburndale, Florida. And we had some Canadians attend, and they were talking about best practices. I think we should share a couple of them on here. If you're going to be coming into the U.S. or out of the U.S. and you're carrying firearms, you don't want to take them to the country. Most like hardware stores and gun shops near the border on the U.S. side have gun storage.
I didn't know that.
Neither did I. So you could actually just drop your gun there. They'll hold it until you come back from Canada.
That's brilliant. That's something, well, not in that case we would have done, but if we want to go.
Yeah, if you're just going to pop in, go play around Canada for a few months and then come back out, that's great. The other thing is do what we did, send them through on an FFL so you can pick them up. Send them to Tok, Alaska, which is TOK, and then send them there, and you won't have as many problems. I could say that fast forward, we've done this trip, 5 times now?
Yes.
I get shook down 100% of the time now.
No, 99% of the time.
Oh, yeah, the one time that I rolled out with Ashley for college, and her little frickin' hoopty mobile was full of kid toys, well, college stuff.
So he was in our truck, and he was towing our daughter's car behind, and I was meeting them down there, in Minnesota?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was in Chicago for psychiatrist conference because I used to be a behavioral healthcare recruiter. So they drove through Canada, and they told me it was like the cutest thing because she has like all her books, all her stuff going to college. And she tells the border crossing that I'm going to college, like all happy and everything. She used to be a cheerleader too.
Right.
And they were like, they opened the trunk and they're like, yep, you're
going
to
college. They're like, have fun. So just know if you ever piss off the Canadian government, you will get put on a watch list. You will be shook down. They will throw you out of the country. They will find the living crap out of you.
But I will say, I appreciate how thorough they are because every time Chris and I have gone through there since then, I love how thorough they are. I'm like, it does seem like an inconvenience and it may be weird because he's giving me the weird look. No, it's just that they want their country safe.
100%. I can't blame them. That's why we started out with I was stupid. I'm not blaming Canada. So their laws, their rules, their way. You either abide by or don't come.
Yeah, and when we go in there, I mean, of course, we got to go in the office. And then Chris has to have a conversation. They take him to the other room. I don't know if they're having like milk or tea or cookies or something because he's in there for a little while. And they'll bring him inside and talk to him by himself because out of like privacy.
It's respect because they don't know if Martha knows what I did in 2012 going into Canada, which.
I was like, look, we've been together since the 1900s.
Oh, we didn't tell him how your mama was a smuggler.
Oh.
Yeah, you see that, right?
All right. So my mom was riding with me in the SUV, and I was towing a trailer behind. She went into a gas station in Oregon and got a huge deal on a couple cartons of cigarettes. There's a limit to how many cigarettes in cartons that you can bring to Canada. And when her and we got waved on through to come through Canada peacefully, by the time that 5 hours in when Chris and Ashley were detained and I was going to get us lunch, we pull into the little lunch area and there's a Starbucks and my mom was like, she told me about it. I was like, throw that away. I made her throw away 2 brand new cartons of cigarettes. I was so sick to my stomach that she smuggled that in there.
Because she didn't declare them.
Yeah, well, I learned about the list. Well, the 5 hours you sitting there.
You got lots of time to research. Yeah. When your butt's stuck in detention. You was on timeout.
You was on timeout. I was just emotional support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just know if you bring liquor, alcohol, or, same thing, but cigarettes, anything like that, yeah, that's a no-go.
There's a
don't bring weed.
Thing.
We don't use it, but don't bring it.
There's a beautiful thing called the internet, and they have their own webpage, and you can just look up what you can and can't bring and in how many quantities.
Or you can stick around to the Working and Wandering podcast because this is a 10-part series on planning and living and moving and traveling in, about, and through Alaska.
Yep, and going through Canada.
5 times. We got it right 4 out of 5. You can't get 4 out of 5 people to agree on everything, so we got to be good there, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So literally we're going to be doing a 10-part series on everything travel planning to Alaska, traveling through Alaska, the best places to eat, what to do, what not to do, how to declare your items. Like, we're going to go super in depth. So please follow us everywhere that podcasts are broadcast.
And this will be on YouTube, Venturesome Couple. YouTube channel.
And you can also go on to venturesomecouple.com. We'll have the podcast loaded up there if you just want to listen. If you want to watch it and you want to see it, go to YouTube.
That's right.
That's right.
On the line.
On the line. And in all seriousness, if you have questions about what not to do, if you don't want to get thrown out of the country, reach out to us. You can go to our website and then put your name in our email list, or just shoot us an email, info@venturesomecouple.com, and ask the questions. We'll be happy to answer, point you in the right directions. There's many Canadian websites that you have to navigate in order to get all the information you need to safely and efficiently cross the border.
Yes, and we're excited to bring you the Alaska series. I get to share home with all of you.
And I'm a transplant.
Yes, you are.
Yep. All right. Thank you for listening to our podcast, everybody. Most importantly,
don't forget, like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube.
And if not, leave a comment down below, whether it is YouTube or on the podcast, because it helps to spread the word about working and wandering. We know we're the newbies on the block.
That's right. Thank you so much, and enjoy every moment.